Imagine standing before an infinite ocean. The waves gently strike the shore, each bringing with it a fragment of ancient wisdom. That ocean is human thought, and we are merely apprentices trying to navigate its depths. For centuries, brilliant minds have mapped these waters, leaving us charts we can follow. These maps are the books we will explore together today. Remember to subscribe, activate the notification bell, like if the video provides value, and comment your favorite books so we can read them. The path of thought is not easy. It requires courage to question the established, humility to recognize our ignorance, and perseverance to continue when answers aren't evident. As Socrates said, "I only know that I know nothing." This simple phrase encapsulates the essence of philosophy, recognizing that true knowledge begins with awareness of our own ignorance. Today, we will embark on a journey through 10 fundamental works, 10 beacons that have illuminated the thoughts of entire generations. These aren't simply books to read and forget, but life companions that will transform your way of seeing the world and, more importantly, of seeing yourself. The first book in our journey is Plato's Republic. Written more than 2 millennia ago, this dialogue invites us to imagine an ideal society, and through it, to understand the nature of justice. But Plato goes further. He presents his famous allegory of the cave, where chained prisoners mistake shadows for reality. How many times have we ourselves confused the shadows of our perceptions with true reality? Plato teaches us that philosophy is precisely that painful but necessary process of liberation, that turning of the gaze toward the true light. The aim of education, he tells us, is not to fill a vessel, but to kindle a flame. And that flame, my friends, is what drives us to question, to doubt, to not settle for the easy explanations offered to us. Continuing our journey, we arrive at Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics. If Plato invited us to look toward the sky of ideas, his disciple brings us back to earth, to the concrete, to practical life. Aristotle presents us with a seemingly simple but profoundly transformative question: how to live a good life. Not a life of ephemeral pleasures or accumulated wealth, but a full life, a life of virtue and balance. Aristotle's answer resonates through the centuries. Happiness is not a passing state, but an activity of the soul in accordance with virtue. And virtue, my friends, is that middle point between two extremes, that difficult but necessary moderation. Excellence, he tells us, is not an act, but a habit. Our character is forged day by day, decision after decision, like the sculptor who patiently shapes marble until revealing the hidden beauty. How many of us seek shortcuts to happiness? Aristotle reminds us that such paths don't exist. The good life requires effort, constant practice, self-discipline. But the reward is incomparable, an existence in harmony with our deepest nature. Moving forward in time, we encounter Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher. This is not an academic treatise but an intimate diary, written not for posterity, but for his own spiritual development. In its pages, we find a powerful man struggling with the same concerns that assail us all: fear, anger, pain, death. Marcus Aurelius teaches us an invaluable lesson. We cannot control what happens around us, but we can control our response to it. Do not be disturbed, he writes, for all things happen according to universal nature. How liberating it is to understand that our inner peace doesn't depend on external circumstances, but on our own attitude, our capacity to accept the inevitable and focus on what is in our power. Jumping to the Middle Ages, we find Confessions by St. Augustine, a work that revolutionizes the autobiographical genre by turning it into a path of self-knowledge and spiritual transformation. Here, for the first time in history, a man dissects his own inner life with brutal honesty, exposing his weaknesses, contradictions, and most intimate struggles. St. Augustine invites us to undertake that same inner journey, to descend into the depths of our consciousness, to encounter our naked truth. Do not go outside, he advises. Return to yourself. In the inner man dwells truth. What a wonderful paradox. To find something as vast as truth, we must look not toward the external infinite, but toward our own heart. His reflections on time, memory, and desire remain astonishingly current. Reading him, one feels conversing with a contemporary, with someone who knows the concerns of the modern soul. "Late have I loved you, beauty so ancient and so new," he writes in one of the most moving passages of universal literature, showing us that the philosophical path is also a path of love. We now advance to the Renaissance with René Descartes' Discourse on Method. In a world where ancient certainties were crumbling, Descartes set out to find an unshakable foundation for knowledge, and he did so through systematic doubt, questioning everything that could be false, until reaching his famous cogito ergo sum, "I think, therefore, I am." This simple statement forever changed the course of Western thought. Descartes showed us that certainty begins in consciousness itself, in that act of thought that cannot be denied even by the most skeptical. It is not enough to have a good mind, he warns us. The main thing is to apply it well. Human reason, well directed, thus becomes our most reliable compass in the ocean of uncertainty. We now arrive at the Enlightenment with Immanuel Kant's Critique of Pure Reason, a monumental work that redefined the limits and possibilities of human knowledge. Kant faced a fundamental question: what can we really know? His answer is as humble as it is revolutionary. Our knowledge is limited by the structures of our own mind. We cannot know things in themselves, Kant tells us, but only as they appear to us, filtered by our mental categories. This distinction between phenomenon and noumenon seems technical, but has profound implications for our daily lives. It teaches us to be more humble regarding our certainties, more aware of our prejudices, more open to perspectives different from our own. Sapere aude, exclaims Kant, dare to know. This is the motto of the Enlightenment, but it could also be the motto of our own philosophical quest. To dare to think for oneself, to question established authorities, to critically examine one's own beliefs. Freedom, Kant reminds us, begins with this autonomy of thought. Next we find The World as Will and Representation by Arthur Schopenhauer, a work that immerses us in the depths of human desire. For Schopenhauer, behind the veil of appearances hides a blind and irrational force, the will. This insatiable will drives us to constantly desire, and desire, he tells us, is the source of all suffering. Life swings like a pendulum backward and forward between pain and boredom, he writes with his characteristic frankness. What a penetrating diagnosis of the modern condition, where we alternate between frantic anxiety and existential emptiness. But Schopenhauer doesn't abandon us in despair. He offers three paths of liberation: art, which allows us disinterested contemplation; compassion, which breaks the illusion of separateness; and the negation of will, which brings us closer to an almost mystical wisdom. We now enter the 19th century with Friedrich Nietzsche's Thus Spoke Zarathustra, a poetic and philosophical work that announces the death of God and the advent of the Superman. Nietzsche challenges us to face the abyss of nihilism and transform it into an opportunity for creating new values. In a world without absolute truths or metaphysical foundations, we are called to become artists of our own existence. You must create chaos within yourself to give birth to a dancing star, proclaims Zarathustra. What a powerful invitation to embrace our contradictions, to transform our suffering into creativity. Nietzsche speaks to us of the will to power, not as domination over others, but as constant self-overcoming, as a creative impulse that shapes our life according to freely chosen values. His concept of eternal return confronts us with an existential test. Would you live in such a way that you would wish every moment of your life to be repeated infinitely? This question forces us to evaluate the authenticity of our choices, to live each moment with full affirmation. Become who you are, he exhorts us, reminding us that the philosophical life is a continuous process of self-discovery and self-creation. We arrive at the 20th century with Martin Heidegger's Being and Time, a work that revolutionizes our understanding of human existence. Heidegger presents the human being as Dasein, the being there thrown into the world, always already in a concrete situation, always already in relation with others, always already projecting toward future possibilities. The fundamental question is no longer what is being, but what does it mean to be? And this question can only be answered from our lived experience, from our being in the world. Heidegger invites us to awaken from the forgetfulness of being, to recover a more authentic relationship with existence beyond inherited interpretations and technological simplifications. Language is the house of being, writes Heidegger. In a world dominated by superficial chatter and instrumental communication, this phrase reminds us of the revealing power of words when used with depth and attention, when they allow us to poetically inhabit the world. Delving into contemporary currents, we find Jean-Paul Sartre's Being and Nothingness, a cornerstone of existentialism. Sartre presents us with a radical vision of human freedom. We are condemned to be free, to constantly choose in a world without predetermined essences or absolute values. Our existence precedes our essence. We are not what we are, but what we make of what has been made of us. Man is the future of man, affirms Sartre, underlining our inescapable responsibility. Each choice we make not only defines who we are, but implicitly proposes a model of humanity. This vertiginous freedom generates anguish, but is also the source of our dignity and greatness. Bad faith consists precisely in fleeing from this freedom, in pretending that our decisions are determined by external factors, in evading the responsibility for our own life. What a pertinent lesson for an era in which so many seek external culprits for their failures or attribute their successes to impersonal forces. Sartre returns the helm of our existence to us, reminding us that we are authors, not mere characters of our story. Our final work is Emmanuel Levinas's Totality and Infinity, by a philosopher who, after the horrors of the Holocaust, proposes a radically new ethics based on the encounter with the other. For Levinas, Western philosophy has been too centered on the self, on totality, on understanding that reduces the other to the same. Against this tradition, he invites us to experience the transcendence that arises in the face of another human being. The face of the other speaks to us, writes Levinas, and in this speaking there is an infinite ethical demand. Before any decision or reflection, we are already obligated by the vulnerable presence of the other, by that gaze that wordlessly tells us, "Do not kill me. Do not reduce me to my utility. Answer for me." In an increasingly narcissistic and utilitarian society, where we tend to see others as instruments for our ends or as obstacles to our desires, Levinas reminds us of the ethical primacy of interpersonal encounter. True humanity begins with hospitality, with welcoming the stranger, with responsibility toward those whose lives are in our hands. We have traversed a vast landscape of ideas, from ancient Greece to our days. 10 fundamental works that have shaped Western thought and continue to question, challenge, and inspire us. But philosophy is not a museum of dead ideas, but a living conversation we are invited to join. These books are not fetishes to admire from afar, but tools for thinking, mirrors to see ourselves, maps to orient ourselves in the labyrinth of existence. As Maria Zambrano said, philosophy is transformation. If knowledge does not transform, it is not true knowledge. True mastery of thought consists not in accumulating information or repeating doctrines, but in developing that amazing capacity to question the given, to see beyond appearances, to penetrate the essence of things. It's not about becoming scholars, but seekers of truth, lovers of wisdom, which is what the word philosopher literally means. Each of us has the potential to awaken that philosophical spark sleeping within. We need only a little courage to ask the difficult questions, a little humility to recognize our limits, a little patience to remain in uncertainty without rushing toward premature answers. The path of thought is infinite. There are always new depths to explore, new heights to scale. As Wittgenstein said, "The limits of my language are the limits of my world." By expanding our philosophical vocabulary, by familiarizing ourselves with new ways of thinking, we are literally expanding our world, making it richer, more complex, fuller with possibilities. May these 10 books be for you not just objects of study, but life companions, interlocutors in that silent dialogue that is thought. May they help you find your own philosophical voice, your own path to wisdom. Because in the end, as Socrates taught us more than 2 millennia ago, the life worth living is the examined life. And that examination never ends, never completes itself, always calls us to go beyond, to immerse ourselves more deeply in the mystery of existence. Recommend other books in the comments. What are your favorites?